David Ross, the director, brought me into Kamloops and to acclimatize myself to as much Shuswap reality as I could. He introduced me to the Shuswap people, and he had me spend the first day out in the hills, out in the mountains, out in the countryside, just breathing in the air, looking at the trees and the landscape, the lay of the land, and the bird, listening to the bird cries, and then looking at the sagebrush and the trees, the ponderosa pines. Just got a feel for the land so that I looked at the river from a distance and looked at what it looked like. At that point in time, I think something in my mind clicked. And that's what the play ultimately is about. It looks like it's a story of Delilah Rose Johnson, but ultimately it's a story of the land. It's the voice of the land that is speaking through essentially these four goddess-like figures. There are two themes. The first theme is the theme of eviction from a garden, because I always work from the perspective of mythology, classical, Christian, and Aboriginal simultaneously, in one form or another. So the first theme in this particular sonata called Ernestine Shuswap Gets Her Trout is the theme of eviction from a garden. We see a community being evicted from a garden, the garden called British Columbia, little by little by little, and until life itself is taken away at the end. And then the second theme, the secondary theme of the sonata, so to speak, is the idea of death as a banquet. That basically the idea that we are all, through the course of our lives, preparing for the ultimate banquet, and our ultimate meeting with the Great Spirit or with God or whatever at the banquet table, so to speak. So those two themes are introduced at a very early point in the play, as in a sonata, and then in the development section, they're developed and developed and developed and developed until they come to a shattering climax at the point of Delilah Rose's death.
We are trying to achieve, a fair amount in 2 weeks. It is achievable, and we've got the right people. But we're going to be working together quite a bit, perhaps more than we would in a normal situation. I mean, the playwright obviously is going to have a tremendous input, but I want all of that to go through me. I don't want actors to go to the playwright and ask for rewrites or even ask for explanations. It needs to go through us as a group.
David Ross, I look at him and it's like he's just given me a fabulous opportunity, and he's been very supportive. He was the one who conceived of this project. He commissioned me to write this play. And also the way he's cast the show, he picked this cast, not me, with my suggestions. Like, I've been able to advise him on how to cast the show, but ultimately it's all his decision.
Can we, for our first time through it, if you can not worry so much about learning it, but more
just do it right off
about
the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just do it right off the book, and then next time we get to it, we can take that time. But this time, I'd just like to feel that we're sort of on the right page.
Okay.
And just give me a second. I want to ask Thompson something.
I would go for less for the realistic. Think more in terms of rhythm and muscularity and strength, and almost like you're singing, Ernestine Shuswap, I'm going to get you a trout. So I find it a bit sluggish at the moment, okay? It just sort of sags too much.
Light on Ernestine.
Ernestine Shuswap, I'm going to get you. He says to me first thing this morning, "Get me?" I says back to him from my side of the bed. Get me for what? And the sun's not even up yet, okay? It's still pitch dark and he's already got me going. A fish, Joe Shuswap says to me from right there on his pillow next to mine, like he's talking to the ceiling. A fish. I'm getting you a fish. Oh, I says to him, relieved kind of, because you see, I guess I heard him wrong. Hey, it was only 5 a.m., okay? I'm not even awake yet, okay? Not really. Oh, I says to him, my husband, from right there on my pillow next to his. What kind of fish, Joe Shuswap? What kind of fish you gonna get me? I says to him, as if I didn't know what kind of fish. What am I, born yesterday? Anyway, he's sitting up in bed now, yawning, stretching, trying real hard to come back from the dead. A trout, he says to me, his wife of 37 years. A rainbow trout. Biggest, hugest rainbow trout ever seen in this part of the world. That's what I'm getting you. Ernestine Shuswap, I'm getting you a trout.
Me, Annabelle Okanagan of Kamloops, BC. My dear late husband, Johnny Okanagan of Kamloops, BC. My father, Jeremiah Jerome of Kamloops, BC. My dear grandfather, Benjamin Jerome of Kamloops, BC. My great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Okay, I'll just pause there for a second.
Bravo.
Good, good. Big improvement that time, big improvement. When you're doing all the greats, what's really neat is when I see you thinking about each one. Like when I can see at one point your brow furrowed up. Great. You know. So we see the thinking happening. Yeah. Rather than it just being adding them all in.
Lisa C, it's my version of the begat from the Bible.
Yes, right. Sorry. Yeah, begat. Good. Okay.
I conceived of it as a string quartet quite specifically. I thought all the way through the process of Delilah's a string quartet. The classical string quartet is basically made of always without fail made up of a first violin, a second violin, a viola, and a cello. So Delilah Rose Johnson is the first violin. Annabelle Okanagan is the second violin. Isabel Thompson is the viola, and Ernestine Shuswap is the cello. So there we have it, a classical string quartet in sonata form called Ernestine Shuswap Gets Her Trout.
Fishing's not allowed? Why, that would be like me, Annabelle Okanagan of Kamloops, BC. That would be like me, coming right into your homes, opening my mouth and telling you, yes, you, and 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 you, there in the tight red sweater. That would be like me telling you, no more breathing. Stop right now.
I like the interplay that Thompson has between the two worlds of white and Indian, and the rhythms of those two worlds as well. He's using the classical music, and yet for me the writing is very Cree. The rhythms within it I recognize from home, so it's a really interesting. I like how he's kind of messing around with that.
I mean, Shakespeare's like that too, isn't it? Not? I mean, I still don't really understand Shakespeare fully, but the rhythm of Shakespeare, it's a technique, you know, it's a technique of transmitting language to audiences. Rhythm is the secret. To me, a stage artist hypnotizes an audience with rhythm. If you could put in, and he says,
Okay.
and now he's in the kitchen lighting up the wood stove, praying over the pump, pouring water in the kettle, getting coffee ready, and he says, Ernestine Shuswap, I'm giving you a try.
Okay,
Because right now it doesn't quite scan.
Okay. What he had said was that he had made an edit, and he realized in making that edit, he hadn't taken into account that moment. There was a little bump there that he didn't want there. So he said, instead of saying this line, say, he says to me, so, blah, blah, blah. I had the script now, I could find it, as opposed to just saying it. So, and then there was a discussion. He's so detailed, he's so exacting. So he says, no. So I said it for him two different ways. It was either he said or he said to me. And he liked he said better than he said to me. That's how exacting he is. Mm-hmm. And so I said to him, well, I find that when I say he said, that then there's a space. And I said, that's okay, there can be space, but I have to leave that beat in there. And he said, that's okay, leave that beat, and then you can fill it with a movement. So you see, he's thinking in multidisciplinary terms all the time.
Of all my plays, of all the 10 or so plays that I've written, this is the one that came the fastest and the easiest. You know, it just basically came in one draft. And very little structural change has occurred since that first draft. All the subsequent drafts have are the result of doctoring, small pieces of doctoring here and there, but no major structural change. And it came with relatively little pain, whereas other plays that I've written, DRYLIPS, Album to KAPUSKASING, for instance, was a process of extreme pain. It was a very painful birth. This one was so easy.
He's taken the idea of 4 women preparing the banquet for the Prime Minister of the day as a launch point for discussing what the issues are. And he isn't shouting at us for 2 hours. He isn't railing at us and pointing fingers and blaming. He's such a mix in personality. There are moments of incredible lightness and moments of incredible darkness.
Well, I was born in a tent in a snowbank in December, in the extreme northwest corner of Manitoba, where it meets Saskatchewan and what is now called Nunavut, in the bush on a beautiful, beautiful lake. We were traveling across the north by dog sled. My father was a caribou hunter and a trapper and a fisherman. Family of 12, I was the 11th. Anyway, my mother was pregnant. She went into labor halfway through the journey back down to the village where we're registered as residents, Brochet, Manitoba, tiny village way up north. And my mother went into labor, and my father pitched a tent, and I was born in a snowbank on December 6, 1951. We had this fantastic life of traveling by dog sled up north, dog sled in the wintertime, canoe in the summertime, in the most extraordinary landscape on the face of the earth. Like northern Manitoba, if you've ever flown over that territory, you see that even though it looks like it's all land on a map, there's actually more water up there than there is land. There's hundreds upon hundreds of lakes and rivers and waterfalls, forests and eskers and hills and wild animals, like moose and caribou. The herds of caribou were astonishing. The fishing was astonishing. The bird life, the ptarmigans, and the blackbirds and the robins and the chickadees and all the rest of them. The animals, the beaver, the mink, the otter. It was just a paradise on earth. Then I went to boarding school in Palm, Manitoba, and then subsequently high school in Winnipeg, University of Western Ontario, London, Ontario, and also a year in London, England, studying with a classical pianist. I mean, I guess one of the deciding factors was that I started my piano studies way too late. Normally, a concert pianist starts their piano studies at the very early. Most concert artists do. Cellists, violinists, pianists, and so on and so forth, at ages as early as 4, 5, 6 years old. I didn't start until 11, until I was 11 years old. And the reason behind that, of course, is because I come from a part of the world where that is extremely isolated, northern Manitoba, where there is no such thing as musical instruments like this, for instance, or musical education, music teachers. I like to think of my stage work, my theater work, as a piano sonata, for instance, or a string quartet and the piano. But primarily the piano, I like to think of it as a piano, where I have my legato characters, my staccato characters, and I have, and all the principles of music making: augmentation, diminution, phrasing, breathing, modulation, counterpoint, harmony, and so on and so forth, all come into play. And the stage essentially becomes your grand piano, and the actors are your keys.
The Laurier Memorial is not a stone monument. It's a printed record of a speech delivered to Prime Minister Laurier by the chiefs of the Shuswap, Okanagan, and Thompson nations in August 1910. Prime Minister Laurier was invited to Kamloops in response to the increasing agitation of the Indian people faced with the pressure of growing numbers of settlers moving on to their traditional homelands. Chief Louis of Kamloops welcomed the Prime Minister, and while listing the many grievances, appealed to him to uphold the promises made to the Indian people by the Dominion and provincial governments.
We welcome you here, and we are glad we have met you in our country. Our confidence in you has increased since we have noted of late the attitude of your government towards the Indian rights movement of this country, and we hope that with your help, our wrongs may at last be righted.
I'd actually been aware of this document, the Laurier Memorial, for about 10 years. So it's a matter of waiting till the time is right. And when members of the Shuswap Cultural Education Society approached us about can we do something together, that's when it all came into place. And they were interested in the Laurier Memorial, and as I mentioned to you before, I found it an incredible document. I'd never read anything like it before. To me, it makes a huge contribution to the issue of land claims, at least theoretically.
The Sir Wilfred Laurier Memorial is, in our view, or in my view particularly, is the Magna Carta of the Shuswap Nation. It lays out our collective vision and view of who we are as a people, in particular in our relationship to the land. To our homeland, in which we, the chiefs, laid out where, as a people, we came from, where we were in 1910, and where they hope to be in the future.
Obviously, that's the political bedrock that the show sits on. Beyond that, it's a tremendous piece of art, and that's where Thompson's great writing ability comes into it, the acting ability of the performers, the designers, and so on. You know.
David had sent me the Laurier Memorial and some supporting material, and the thing that truly impressed me, well, the Laurier Memorial itself I found largely undramatizable, so I desperately looked around for an alternative means of bringing forward the Laurier Memorial, and included in that package were this kind of like a newsletter, kind of brochure type of publication, 3 or 4 thin pages, featuring photographs of old Shuswap women of the area, and short little biographies about these women, and these faces just so impressed me. They were so beautiful and so touching, you know, these kind, old, wise women who'd lived all their lives in this region. They were sort of expressions of the landscape, and I fell in love with them, and those images stayed with me as they do to this day. So which is what made me decide to write about the women as opposed to the men who made the presentation to Wilfred Laurier. I decided to write about their wives instead, the wives of the chiefs, so to speak, preparing the meal that they were going to serve to Wilfred Laurier. The river had a profound effect on me because it was sort of like the lifeblood of the land, the veins of the land, so to speak. And I kept thinking about it, and eventually it transformed itself into these women came forward, and I gave them souls, so to speak. I animated them. I gave them personality. I gave them names. The process of choosing the names was a very interesting exercise. The list of names that I went through on paper to select the ones that I wanted, so that their last names eventually represented the tribes of this area: Shuswap, Okanagan, and Thompson. Ernestine Shuswap, Isabel Thompson, and Annabel Okanagan, for instance. So that the women that you see, the 4 women that you see in the play are sort of personifications of these energies, these peoples, these tribes, these nations. And the river itself eventually became the tablecloth. Basically, I had these women prepare for the banquet, this mega banquet that they were going to serve to Sir Wilfred Laurier, the Prime Minister of Canada, on August 25th, 1910, when he did in fact come here. That piece is history. Everything else is allegory. And so I had one of the women preparing a trout for the banquet, and another woman preparing the Saskatoon pies for the banquet, another woman preparing beaver for the banquet, and the youngest of the 4 women preparing the tablecloths for the banquet. And little by little, the tablecloth transformed into a wedding veil, and then eventually the tablecloth, in my mind, transformed into the Thompson River itself, so that the Thompson River is the veil of this bride.
So
it's way past noon.
Sure.
And it's way past noon already and way too hot. So I'd strongly advise Isabel Thompson of Kamloops, BC, that you get back to work.
Barbed wire. See, Ernestine Shuswap, I knew it was barbed wire. Oh, Charles Peter Johnson, father of William August Johnson, brand new husband of my little hussy of a sister, Delilah Rose Johnson. Do you hear me? I will put knapweed laced with iodine deep into a pie. At the banquet tonight, you will eat that pie, and then you will die.
Charles Peter Johnson is simply low man on the totem pole, Isabel Thompson. He's just a cog in the machine, a nothing, a pimple on the face of society is what Joe says. If you poison anyone tonight, why not the great big kahuna of Canada?
Good, good, very nice.
What I might do is make a brand new small transparency that has black barbed wire and white light on them.
Yeah. And save.
And then save the reversal for the
later.
stylized moment where we wash the stage
Beautiful.
with barbed wire.
Beautiful.
Because it's pretty symbolic. It's not literal at that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, everybody, standing by then. We're in preset right now. And as the chortle crossfades, we'll crossfade that with lighting that will come up on Annabelle, and she'll have her pot with her, and her ladle, and her document, and then come up on the special on Delilah Rose, catch the glint on the scissors. There will be Bach, there will be River, and some will work out a cue for you, Isabel.
Charles Peter Johnson is simply low man on the totem pole. A nothing, a pimple on the face of society is what Joe says. If you poison anyone tonight, why not the great big kahuna of Canada?
In comes the barbed wire that locks them.
In sorrow and in gladness.
It's a great character. And it's a really great character. It's really gonna push me. I've never quite done anything like this before, character-wise.
In hate and in love.
Working with other First Nations actresses too is always a treat. It's just this type of play is magnificent. I mean, it's a classic. Like many of his plays are going to be classics. I really like that he's gone political, that he's delving into this area, which I'm not sure that he has done before, which is new and really exciting. One thing that I really like about Thompson's writing is that even though the odd person may not have a really strong grasp on Native culture and Native ways and that sort of thing, they get a fresh taste of it, a big full taste of it with his writing. I mean, he captures Native humor, he captures the strength of Native women, he captures it all, you know. It's a real treat. It's a treat to play one of these characters.
A white man killed my Johnny. A white-skinned cowboy named Oliver Clapperton killed Johnny Okanagan, my dear late husband. Shot him in the forehead on a Saturday night at the door to that hellhole of a bar, Kelligrew Saloon, at Main and 3rd in Kamloops Village 6 years ago. Killed him for a piece of land. His land. Johnny Okanagan's little piece of trapline.
I'm Ojibwe and Swampy Cree. My mom's Irish and English. I feel like Annabelle is one of the 4 voices of the river, of the land, and that I'm the voice that says I am the land. I have been here before the ancestors. I've been here before memory, and that I have a right to exist. And how dare you come and try to claim me when I am?
Fishing's not allowed? Ernestine Shuswap turns to me and says, What do you mean, Isabel Thompson of Kamloops, BC? What do you mean? Just sitting there contented with my coffee, smiling like a mink, while trying to upset me by telling me that fishing's not allowed? Why, ever since the day he popped like a pickle from the belly of a woman named Minnie, and that wasn't yesterday, Isabel Thompson of Kamloops, BC. Oh, that wasn't yesterday.
I, as Isabel, am someone who has discovered the right way to live, and I'm going to hang on to that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon how you look at her, my right ways might not always be all that sensible. Isabel has adopted a fair amount of quote-unquote white ways of being, seeing those as somehow superior.
You don't! No, I don't! Yes! No! Yes! No!
And so I think that sometimes Isabel appears as a bit of a, goof, kind of comic character a little bit because of that. But she takes herself very, 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 very seriously. It's interesting, and it's also to jump into anyone else's life. That's what is so interesting about being an actor anyway. So it has that same element. Here I am jumping into another person's life, trying to find out what's it like to be here, what's it like to relate to people, who am I, how do we live? So that's fascinating. This is particularly fascinating because it is Canadian, and it's not really all that long ago. It's not set hundreds of years ago. It's actually, relatively modern.
Ta-ra-ra-bum-dee-ay, Sir Wilfred Laurier, will he love you today, or will he boom-dee-ay? La-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la, la-la-la-la-la-la. Oh, why in the name of Jesus and the crucifix I had to volunteer to cook a trout for the great big kahuna of Canada? I'll never know. And why, of all the fish in the world, a trout? Why can't the great big kahuna of Canada eat salmon like everyone else around here? You have to shift away from your own nature a little bit, because I'm a very kind of excitable and fiery kind of person by nature. Whereas Ernestine in the story is a very, very earthy woman. She's a very earthbound woman. And in Thompson's construction of the piece, which is like a string quartet, because of the way he has written the piece, and because he's Cree and their language flows like a river, and because he is also a musician and he has written a lot of this stuff, a lot of the monologues almost like a chant. So it's almost singing. So rather than being punchy and staccato and emphatic, I have to move myself into a more flowing and sustained form of speaking.
And it's his business of only native actors have the right to play native roles, which may be music to a native actor's ears, but it's death to a native playwright's career, Because in this show, of course, we've cast, the director and producer, David Ross, has cast 2 native actors and 2 non-native actors for 4 parts that are native. And there are people out there who say that only native actors have the right to play native roles, who would say that those 2 non-native actors in the show have no right to be there. And I just completely disagree with that. I think that would be like saying that only Italian, if that's the case, then you should only be, theater companies in this or any other country should be casting only Italian actors in Romeo and Juliet, only Danish actors in Hamlet, only German actors in Mother Courage, only Jewish actors in The Diary of Anne Frank, and so on and so forth, And if you were to put that kind of ruling into equity and ACTRA and all that, you'd just kill the industry.
There's a part of me that believes that if someone were to ask me as an Aboriginal person to act in a role as a Swedish masseur, not that would ever happen, but if that was offered to me, I would not want my race to get in the way.
The women that we're working with, they suit these roles so well, and they're so fun to work with, and they're lovely women. But I also think that we could cast it completely native. You know, it could happen.
And it's only because I know of women in the country that, you know, it's not just two people, but I know of a handful of women that could play those two roles that are native.
To decide that your performers are going to be anything is a political statement. I'm willing to accept that our culture is still working on dealing with the sexual barrier. I mean, there will come a time when a man will step on stage and play a woman and not be a comic character. But I mean, obviously we already have various kinds of drag and female impersonation acts which are very entertaining. But there will come a day when even sex won't be a barrier. You'll still pick the right person. And so I wouldn't ask myself that question. I would do what I would do with any play, which is, okay, if we're doing a play about that has a really Jewish sensibility, whether it's set in Poland or whether it's set in Toronto or Vancouver, I want to make sure that our Jewish that we have a Jewish touchstone, you know, so that we have that reference point. But beyond that, we live in Western Canada, and we're reflecting that culture, and that's somehow blended in with the original play that we're starting with. With this particular production, I mean, I knew Thompson's feelings, and he knew the philosophy that I basically just explained to you. So we were very much in sync that this is a play that is about an Aboriginal world, but it's not a historical artifact. It's not a document in that way. The document is the foundation of it. So beyond that point, you certainly want touchstones from the Aboriginal world, but you also want to create a new world, because this play it's not a realistic play. You know, it is the work of Thompson's imagination based on some fact, and therefore we want his imagination to be able to play. And for that reason, you want the performers that feel like they will be able to give you that magic. So from the very beginning, we expected there would be some Aboriginal actors and some not.
Ours would be deep.
Almost, yeah.
Ernestine Shuswap is, I called it a string, in the first 6 or so drafts, I called it it's a string quartet for 4 women. String quartets, of course, are structured, their structure is sonata form. Sonata form has 3 distinct sections. There's an exposition section where the 2 themes are exposed or introduced. The 2 themes are then further developed in the development section. They become more and more complex, intertwined with each other in increasingly complex ways until there was an explosion, and like a huge climax, such as you would hear in a symphony.
Do they not? Give me those scissors!
Then a child came falling from the sky. A child came falling from the sky.
Give me those scissors!
That child came falling, landing right in her belly with a doof. But the child was white. For the love of George and the dragon, the baby was white. White as a pillowcase and not nut brown, not like her. And he, what's more, was a Protestant, not a Catholic. Isn't that bizarre? Just like your babies. My dear sister dear, my dear mother dear, just like your 12 brown babies came a-falling from a Thompson Indian sky down into Shuswap Indian earth. You, a Shuswap Indian woman, married a Thompson Indian man, did you not? Say it. Yes. Say it! Say it!
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, what? Yes, what? I, Isabel Thompson, a Shuswap Indian woman married a Thompson Indian man.
Then why are you condemning me? Your youngest sister and your daughter for marrying a white man and a Protestant, huh? What's a goddamn difference? Huh? What's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference, huh? 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 Tell me! Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me!
Great, that was great.
Good, that's great.
I'm definitely excited that the Sir Wilfrid Laurier Memorial is being put into a play, especially under the great penmanship of somebody like Tomson Highway. I mean, I'm thrilled about it. It takes a historic document, a statement of our ancestors out of the archives and brings it back to the public in such a way that it will reach ordinary people.
Ernestine Shuswap, I'm gonna get you, he says to me. First thing this morning. Get me? I says back to him from my side of the bed. Get me for what? And the sun's not even up yet, okay? It's still pitch dark, and he's already got me going.
Ever since that day old Joe Shuswap's been fishing in that river, Ernestine Shuswap says to me. So what exactly do you mean when you announce to my person that fishing's not allowed in the Thompson River,
Ever since the cave days, ever since the age of the dinosaurs, ever since the day God said, "Let there be light," yes. Ever since that day, we've been fishing in that river, my folks and me.
Does he jiggle when he walks? Does he wiggle? Does he speak many languages? Like Barnabas, who can speak not only his native Thompson, but Shuswap, Okanagan, Haida, Tsimshian, Tlingit, Klingon, Yakima, Sante Sioux, Oglala Sioux, Lakota Sioux, Chalala Sioux, Blackfoot, Dog Rib, Yellowknife, Cree, Arapaho, Navajo, Assiniboine, Winnebago, Sauconfox, Seminole, Wichita, Choctaw, Cherokee, Chippewan, Chippewa, Chickasaw, Chickadee, Kickapoo, Boogaboo, Mick-Mack, Paddywhack, give the dog a bone, and 10 words of English. No choice.
Oh, yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Why in the name of Jesus and his crucifix I had to volunteer to cook that trout for the great big kahuna of Canada? I'll never know. And why, of all the fish in the world, a trout? Why can't the great big kahuna of Canada eat salmon like everyone else around here?
Barbed wire. See? Where does he choose from barbed wire? Oh, Charles Peter Johnson, father of William August Johnson, brand new husband to my little husky of a sister Delilah Rose Johnson. Do you hear me? I will put knapweed, laced with iodine, deep into a pie. At tonight's banquet, you will eat that pie and you will die.
I, Delilah Rose Laughing-Bird of Kamloops, BC, do take you, William August Johnson, formerly of Manchester, England, but now of Kamloops, BC, to be my lawful wedded husband, in health and in sickness, in wealth and in poverty, in sorrow and in gladness, in glory and in shame, in love and in hate and in love. There was a white man in her stomach. A white man in her stomach, yes. A white man who communed with the devil.
Right there in her stomach. In her flesh. In her veins, in her blood. So what was she to do, huh? What the hell was she to do? She would cut it out with scissors. Cut it out, cut it out, cut it out like a little paper doll. And then she would be free. Yes. Then she would be free. Free to return to the land of her. The land of her. Her what, though? What land? What kind of land? What kind of culture? What kind of country? Huh? Great big kahuna of Canada! What kind of country? What kind of world? What kind of life? Huh? 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 So she took her wedding veil, stitched it, and put it on her head. And thus did Delilah Rose Laughing-Bird. Now Delilah Rose Johnson, and thus, to this day, a third pair of eyes hang high over the river in the mist. On nights when the moon is out, a third pair of eyes hang high over the river in the mist, like lamps. And to this day, these eyes, they look out over a village, which became a town, which became a city. They look out over a banquet. This woman's head in the mist does. It looks out over a banquet that sits on her veil of pure white muslin. A banquet that sits on her beautiful veil. A veil they call the Thompson River.
We are more and more being restricted to our reservations, which in most places are unfit. Except we can get fair play, we can see where we will go to the wall, and most of us be reduced to beggary or to continuous wage slavery to maintain us. We have also learned lately that the British Columbia government claims absolute ownership of our reservations, which means that we are practically landless. Thus we find ourselves without any real home in this, our own country.
The play is a microcosm of what is happening in Canadian society today. You can't divide the whites from the blacks forever. They're learning how to coexist in peace, in harmony, and we're doing that. All these races that live in this country, this fabulous country of ours, we're learning slowly, day by day, year by year, decade by decade, how to live cooperatively.